you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get the computer ready. Hold on. My mouse doesn't get it.
They already put all that out. There are some.
But I'll pull it out, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. This is I got a little echo, I guess, maybe, huh? Does it sound bad out there? Okay. Thank you. This is a special meeting for Thursday, October 3rd, 2024 at 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
I will. Tim Hale.
Here.
Stephanie Nowers.
Here.
I'm expecting Dee McKee, Bill Gamble,
Here.
Dimitri Fonoff,
Here.
and I do expect Ron Bernier to call in or be in person, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I'm here.
Thank you, Assemblymember Bernier.
Okay.
Hearing none, then the agenda has been approved as presented. We all rise, please. Assemblyperson Gamble, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on our agenda is audience participation, and we do have a sign-up sheet, and we will go to the people on the sign-up sheet first, and then if there is anyone else that hasn't signed up, they're still welcome to address the assembly. So we have Mr. and Mrs. Michael Bernstein. Okay, which one of you would like to come first and speak, or you want to both come at the same time? Because this is, you have 3 minutes to address the assembly on an item that's on the agenda or any item. Okay,
And if I could get you to press the green button on that mic there. Turn green, the center button, I'm sorry. Go ahead and press it down. There you go,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
state your name and go ahead.
Michael J. Bernstein.
Thank you, go ahead.
All right. I just want to know what is this all about? You're just going to appoint somebody for some position,
Uh-huh.
and I think what's the person's name?
Okay, so we normally have 7 assembly people, and one of the assembly people, the one assembly person that represents District 4, resigned. And so according to our code, then, and I should maybe have the attorney address it, but we do in a quick synopsis, we do an advertisement. People put in their applications, they have to reside in that area for 1 year. And then the assembly has interviews and makes that selection for that appointment. And so currently we have received applications from 4 people, and tonight is set for the time for the interviews. The interviews will be conducted in person. The candidates will not be able to hear the questions that are asked of the other candidates until after they have spoken. Then they will be allowed here. And hopefully the assembly, they will, or not hopefully, but in the assembly will go into executive session. The candidates will have the option of being discussed in public, or they can be discussed in executive session. And then when the assembly comes out of executive session, if any of the assembly people want to make a motion to appoint Mary Sue, then the rest of the assembly will vote on that. And if Mary Sue receives 4 votes, then the clerk will be able to, and if Mary Sue's here, then they can appoint and have her swear in. And so then, tonight, hopefully before midnight, we would have the appointment for Assembly District Number 4. And clerk or attorney, you have
I do.
clarifications or something I missed in a brief? But go ahead.
This person would serve until the next regular election, so November 2025. The applications have been online, but they are also out there by that back door.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, thanks.
you're welcome. Then the next person is Keith, and you want to go ahead and state your name and state.
Keith Rominski.
Okay.
Mrs. Mayor, I guess I don't know what the names of the candidates, so
The name, like the clerk says, the
I
applications.
think I'd
and-
like to wait to speak until after the candidates will be interviewed here in front of the public, in front of the
Sorry, I don't
assembly
quite
and public.
understand.
He's saying he wants to.
Tonight?
After the interviews. And we don't have anything.
I'm sorry, we don't, this audience participation is the only time when, on this agenda, that we have a place for the public to speak.
Okay. I didn't know you had 4 names. I've only seen the 1 name. And who are the 4 people that were interested in being assembly members?
Somebody, George, would you mind getting?
I guess it doesn't make much
applications?
sense for me to
I'm
have an
sorry,
opinion one way or the other on who you're going to appoint when we haven't nobody's interviewed them yet, or we haven't heard the interviews yet.
they're right out there, sir, and I believe they've probably been on our website.
So I guess I have to see what they say during their interview before I'd have an opinion on whether they should be appointed to the
Right.
District 4 seat or not.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir, there's no place
Okay.
on the agenda
Okay,
for
thank you.
that. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, he was considerate to give his away. Thanks, George. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify or give some input or has some questions? Okay, do we have anybody online? We do not have anybody online. Then I'll go ahead and close audience participation. The next item on our agenda is the filling of the Assembly District 4 vacancy. And we are at the portion of the meeting where we will be interviewing the candidates. And Assemblyperson Fonoff, I believe you would like to speak.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, one of the requests that came up from the clerk about what the rules were about in person or otherwise. And I would like to ask to have short executive session before we interview to make that decision which way assembly feels like. And if I may read this, or do we need to approve it first, or do I just read it?
Madam Clerk, you want to go ahead and speak?
Are you raising your hand, Mr. Spiropoulos? If I could, Madam Mayor, I do believe what Assemblymember Fonoff is requesting is that the Assembly discuss whether to hold telephonic interviews or not in executive session, and then, but the decision can't be made in executive session, you would have to move the motion out in public.
So I think, is everybody aware that of the 4 candidates, we have one that has had a family emergency and has gone out of state and would like to be interviewed on the phone tonight rather than being here physically. And so, Assemblyperson Hale.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with having that conversation out here. Is it one that requires this executive session?
Going into executive session is always your choice. It's never a requirement.
Okay,
It was just my request if the assembly wants to do it in executive session. That's what I would have liked to see. But if there's no support there, that's okay.
so he made a motion? No. Oh, he's just commenting. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, it's Assemblyperson Hours, go ahead.
I would also just have no problem discussing this out here. Whether we
Okay.
allow that or not.
Okay, so I guess the question then is, oh, I'm sorry, Assemblyperson McKee, you have a question?
What's going on? He's having a little hard time here.
Okay. Okay. So So let me move my mic closer. And while I'm doing that, let me also say for the record that Assemblyperson McKee arrived at 6:07. So we have 4 candidates that we were going to interview this evening. One of those candidates have contacted the clerk's office saying they had a family situation and they are out of state tonight. And they would like to be interviewed on the phone rather than in person. And so Assemblyperson Fonoff was talking about whether we should go into executive session or discuss it publicly, whether we should allow that candidate to do the interviews by the phone.
Your mic, Dee, your mic.
So now we're talking about whether or not we ought to do that thing, let that person interview on phone?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
There's 1 out of the 4 that's not here tonight.
And the other 3 are already here.
The other 3 are already sequestered away.
I see.
Yeah. So. yes,
Just
go
a
ahead.
question, was Zoom an option for them at all, or? I mean, that would be my preference, but if phone is, I don't have any problem with them doing it by phone, if that's the option they preferred.
I did not offer Zoom because we have our teleconferencing system, which the assembly members also use.
Okay. Yes, Assemblyperson Campbell, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we do not allow telephonic interviews for the assembly seat, and I'd like to speak to that motion.
Okay.
Do we need a second? No, okay. So when we had our executive session on Tuesday, I'm sorry, Mr. Attorney.
Oh.
I'd ask you
Mr.
to not
Turner.
disclose what was discussed in executive
Okay,
session.
okay, all right.
Okay, so we have a motion to not allow the telephonic interview. Okay?
Yeah, that's why we
Assemblyperson-
should go into executive session.
I support that decision too. And we'll be able to discuss and then come vote on that, so.
Assemblyperson Hale, did you want to? Assemblyperson McKee? So the motion before you is Assemblyperson Gamble moved to not allow the interview to be conducted for this one candidate telephonically.
And I guess how I feel about that is, do we know the nature of the guy's going outside to make $1 million, probably not, but if there's a family emergency where which I've just had one recently,
I'll have to let the clerk, they did not contact me, they contacted the clerk's office, I believe, so I will let the clerk speak to that. All I understand is because of a family issue, they are out of state. So, Madam Clerk.
That is all I know also. It's a family issue.
Little question. They've been, we've notified and we had plenty of time to inform that we're going to be holding interviews on this day way before when we even scheduled it. I remember I was on the phone that time. Is that correct? And the candidates were informed of that?
Yes, the candidates were informed.
Okay, thank you.
Assemblyperson Hale, comments?
Yeah, I'd just say that the last time we did this, we did have one candidate who couldn't make it, and we allowed them to interview through remote means. So I would support allowing the candidate to move forward.
yeah, is there any way to contact?
You doing over there, Caleb? Oh,
Is there any way to contact this person, whichever person it is, and ask them, is this I don't know how to word this. Is this a real emergency? Is it like we're going out to a horse race, or we're going out because we got something really big, serious trouble with a family, which of course to me would take precedence, and I'd allow them just about anything. So I don't have enough information here.
sorry. Ron, are you trying to speak?
We can hear the road really well. If you could take us off the speakerphone and off the vehicle phone, that might be helpful. We can't hear you as much
Okay,
as the
hold on.
road.
Okay,
How about now?
yeah,
So
go ahead. Do you mind
I believe,
assembling
you know,
first?
he made all the other deadlines and stuff like that. If it's truly a family emergency and we extended that to somebody last season or last time it happened, I'm for making it fair. So I don't mind doing that, as long as everyone else is on board. If if it comes down to a vote, then let's vote it out. But I truly think that the guy deserves a shot if it's a truly emergency. If it was other way around, that he didn't care enough to spend the time, but understood.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm good.
You're good. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just, am I okay?
She has her light on. No, is that okay if we go to her assembly person? Yeah. Go ahead, assembly person McKee.
I was just going to say, well, I used to be, I had a lot of people that I hired and fired and all that sort of thing for, and if a person didn't show up for a job, that was it. That's just kind of like it. Because that was part of the deal, was you show up when you're told to show up. But that's why I'm so saying, if this is really a big deal, I can't imagine somebody would blow off a job interview just for no reason, but I think they should have given a reason. And could we get a hold of them and get a reason?
No, all we can go on, or I can go on, is the information that was relayed from the clerk, and I believe she has relayed to me and to all of you all she knows, if I can speak for her. So that was all that was relayed to us. So, Assemblyperson Gamble, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to seem like a harsh person. First of all, the language that I saw was an issue. I didn't see anything about emergency in the correspondence. Second of all, the person that was interviewed last time interviewed on video. It wasn't just on the phone. So you actually got to see the person. You got to be able to see their body language and see their physical response as well as their verbal response. And I think, in my years of interviewing people, that's very important. I don't know any of these people. I've never met any of them, so I have no idea who they are, other than what I've read. And I think it's important for me personally to be able to see that interaction, that the body language, the physicalness, as well as the verbal reactions. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion, Assemblyperson Nowers, go ahead.
You're just a mean person. I guess a couple thoughts is, it's going to put them at a disadvantage to be on the phone as a candidate. So I don't think it'd be their preferred way to do it. I agree with you. Seeing somebody in person has a lot more impact. I guess I just feel like I have no idea who it is. I think to Miss McKee's point, like when we get them on the phone, we can ask in a prudent way, what's the reason for this? And that can be part of a reason. I hate to close the door on them if they truly had the fact that they're out of state. You can think of a lot of reasons that would just be completely unavoidable and come up at the last minute. And so I think they're definitely going to be at a disadvantage, but I don't want to shut the door on them. And we do have the ability, if we, we can make a decision tonight, but we could also say, we want to see these people in person and do a follow-up interview. I guess that's just where I'm at.
Further discussion on the motion? Is there objection to?
Madam Mayor, I withdraw my motion.
Okay. Is there objection to him withdrawing his motion?
Is there objection? Is there objection to the motion being withdrawn about not holding a telephonic interview?
Okay. So the motion has been withdrawn. So we're back to our agenda then. And as I said, we're at the part of the meeting where we'll begin doing the interviewing the candidate. And the clerk, I believe, has made, or should I ask if there's any other motions? I don't want to rush this. I want everybody to feel comfortable with it. Every assembly person Hale?
Yeah, I just had a question. Are we going to take them first like we did last time? Okay.
Yeah, that's what yeah. So, the clerk has arranged for them to be interviewed first. And the clerk will ask, just like what we've done in the past, the clerk will ask the questions of the candidates, and the assembly, if they do have follow-up, are welcome to do follow-up. And we'll start with the first candidate. And the clerk has made arrangements with Caleb, and I believe they have everything.
I wanted to ask, Ms.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Caleb, can you tell me if that phone number is on the phone that I gave you? Do we have a different phone number on the phone? Can you unmute it so we can find out if it's Mr. Payne?
Good evening. This is not Mr. Payne. It's Pat
Okay,
Martin.
thank you for letting us
I was
know.
hoping for that.
Thank you.
Yep.
You don't want to be interviewed for the job, Ron?
I did send Mr. Payne a text. I'm gonna go call him real quick.
Okay. So we'll have a brief at ease here while the clerk is contacting, so now you know who it is.
Question? What district is Sutton? Okay, thank you.
Mayor and members of the assembly, Mr. Payne is getting ready to board a plane right now, and he said if he couldn't do it another day, he wanted to thank everybody for the consideration, but he couldn't do it. And if you give me a moment, I will go up and get Mr. Carling.
Okay. Yeah.
We can write notes on these, but we have to turn them into you.
Yeah. Yes.
Might as well speak to that as long as we have a few minutes. You
Sure.
have the questions before you. You can write notes on them. They're yours to keep, yours to throw away. You can give them to me when you're done. I'll shred them. Again, you can keep them, you can give them to the clerk, do whatever you want with them. They're going to be your pre-decisional notes before you vote on who to appoint. And because only the assembly can do it, it is a legislative act. So they're not subject to public disclosure, and you can write whatever you want on them.
Hi.
Hi. So the procedure is that the assembly has come up with 20 questions. The clerk are going to ask the questions. And then if there is some follow-up to one of the questions that one of the assembly wants to do, we'll do that. But probably the majority of the time, the clerk will just go to a question, you'll answer, we'll go to the next question, and we'll continue.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. And I think maybe you can move that microphone up a little bit, or,
Can you hear me okay?
yeah.
You can pull it towards you too if it helps.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, before we get started, Mr. Carling, would you like to give us a brief moment to tell us about yourself?
Certainly. My name is Mark Carling. I'm 42 years old. I've lived in the Valley for a majority of my life. I love it here. Love my fellow Valley residents. I feel like I'd be a good representation of the people in my district. About me personally, I've got 2 kids at home, 6 and 2. And I am a stay-at-home dad at the moment. I stopped my career on the slope to raise my children. My wife still works in the oil field. I've been staying busy with the kids. I'm doing homeschool with them and taking on various projects also. But I've gotten experience in the oil field, business experience, banking experience. I worked for a builder for 5 years. So, that's it in a nutshell, but any other questions about me, feel free to ask. Thanks.
What do you think is the most important skill for an assembly member to have?
An understanding of the people around them and the people that they're representing and the people that they're there to make choices and decisions for. Knowing their fellow Alaskans and the people in their district, I think, is the most important thing. And knowing what they need and what they want to, project ourselves upward.
What do you feel the role of local government should be, and how do you help accomplish that as an assembly member?
Well, my first goal is to join the assembly and to learn as much as I can about how to help. In my limited experience in government, which is none, I want to learn from you guys and ladies about how it's done in here and what goes on, how the decisions are made. And I'm really interested in knowing all about all the homework that is involved with this job as well. Like, I know there's meetings and I know that we all talk with members of the community, but I'm really interested in knowing, like, what do I take home? What can I do? What can I tear open to make these meetings and votes more productive and positive?
What do you think your responsibility is to research issues coming before the assembly, and how would you approach that?
Well, trying to stay caught up with the news is the easy answer that's just kind of out there for everyone to absorb. But just digging deeper and looking at both sides, keeping it bipartisan as far as my research goes, and listening to everybody who I would be representing, trying to get the biggest swath I can.
Do you have something you would like to accomplish on the Borough Assembly, or is there an issue you would like to champion on behalf of the borough?
I think that there's a lot of things that come to mind, and that's a really good question. Something that has concerned me recently is vagrants in town, the numbers of vagrants in town increasing, and it's not so much being disturbed by them personally as how safe other people feel. I know that a lot of people don't feel safe. They don't feel like their town is as safe as it once was, when larger and larger numbers of people who don't have homes have nowhere to go. So that's something that's caught my eye as of late. I noticed those things. And also just the really positive programs that we have that just need bolstering and nurturing as we continue forward. There's a lot of those things that I want to continue to feed. But that's one issue that I've noticed as of late, and I'm not sure what extent the borough's done about it or what we can. And I'm interested in looking into that.
What is the most difficult decision or position you've been in during your professional career?
Well, there's been plenty. I would say working on the slope, I was definitely, I made my way up to a position where people's safety was my responsibility, like always. And, I've been put in positions where the safety of the crew is never, in a perilous place, but it's something to always be aware of. We've done dangerous jobs up there, and it's those are the trickiest positions I've been put in because of the pressure and the responsibility you're given. And it's never been a problem for me, but it's never lost on me. I understand the severity of situations like that. So, yeah, those situations like that where the safety of your crew is constantly needing to be addressed would be the answer.
What role do community councils, comprehensive plans, and desires of communities play into your decision making?
Can you repeat that question, please?
What role do community councils, comprehensive plans, and the desires of the communities play into your decision making?
The desires of the community kind of are at the forefront of where any decision making I would have a part in would come from. And I guess the most important area with that would be just the livelihood of the community. Whatever decisions they're making to improve the livelihood of the community, I'm interested in that. I want to be a part of it and support it. But I need to get more specific about that.
Have you ever attended a community council
I
meeting?
have not.
What do you see the Matsu Borough doing really well, and what could the Matsu Borough do better?
I think that the Matsu Borough is doing really well with road development, path development, snow removal. I think that's fantastic. I am a little bit more interested in providing more opportunities for people to enjoy winter sports elsewhere around the community. I think that's something that can be accomplished, and I think that would be a winning thing for most residents around the valley. Winter sports, cross-country skiing courses, things like that, that don't involve building a baseball stadium, but things that the community would appreciate.
Would you be in favor of the borough becoming a first-class borough with more powers? Why or why not?
I'm afraid I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay.
I don't know the difference between those two categories of borough. So,
Are there any current programs, policies, or actions of the Matsu Borough that you disagree with?
nothing comes to mind at the moment.
If something comes to mind, you can always fill us in.
Okay. Yeah, nothing comes to mind at the moment.
When you look over, excuse me, let me start again. When you look overall at all the aspects of the borough, what are the biggest risks the borough faces?
I think I mentioned that. The one that I mentioned earlier about the homeless issue, I think that is the biggest, one of the biggest concerns that the borough faces. And I think it's a problem with a solution, but it's just so nuanced that it would be something we'd have to work through. They need a shelter, they need somewhere to go, and they shouldn't be on the streets.
The borough has tourism like B&Bs, fishing, hunting, etc., and there are natural resource development activities as well, with things like gravel mining and the rail extension. What is your opinion on those industries and whether they can coexist or not?
Can you repeat the question?
The borough has tourism like B&Bs, fishing, hunting, etc., and there are natural resource development activities as well, with things like gravel mining and the rail extension. What is your opinion on those industries and whether they can exist or not, or coexist or not? Coexist,
Okay.
sorry, did I forget that part? That's important.
I think I think they can definitely coexist. It is tricky. I know it's not the same thing, but you just make me think about road construction when I'm trying to get my Alaskan enjoyment on in the summertime. But no, I think those two industries are just so valuable that even if I didn't think that they do go hand in hand, I would argue that they should, and we'd find a way. But I don't think that one is stomping out the other. I don't really think they're in those industries are in competition with each other from my point of view. I'm certain there's conflicts between those two industries, but at the moment, no, that doesn't concern me. It seems like something that can coexist.
Excluding the port, in your opinion, what are the opportunities for development of a more sustainable economy in the Matsu Borough and also within your district?
It'd be nice to have some more support for small businesses. I'd like to see more opportunities for small businesses opening. So that's one.
Okay. Given the option to bond and construct a project now, or delay construction and forward fund by saving, which should the borough choose?
Can you repeat that, please?
Given the option to bond and construct a project now, or delay construction and forward fund by saving, which should the borough choose?
Oh, man. That really depends on the project. That's a tough question for sure. If the project is sound and has backing from all the great minds who approve, then I could see starting the project now, if it's something that we all believed in enough. But making sure we have the money in hand is super important. So I hate to not have a firm answer on that, but it would depend on the project, and if it's important enough, absolutely. Start right now.
Okay. Consider a lake about 150 acres in size. About half of the people living on that lake want to ban personal watercraft, and about half want them to be allowed. What would you do with that? Ban them or allow them?
Half and half? Well, I'd allow them.
When someone calls and is very upset about their assessed value going up, what are you going to tell that angry constituent?
The taxable value of their property? Well, I would tell, seeing as how if I were on the assembly, I would have been one of the ones who approved that mill rate. I'd give them the reasoning that we used to choose that rate. And any resident who would see it as a gouge, I would explain to them that it's not a gouge, it's money that the borough needs. So, and I could explain to them in more detail, but that would be the gist.
How do you deal with a school district coming in and asking for additional funding every year?
Don't give it to them every year. Ask for progress reports on just where all these funds have been allocated and how they've improved anything, or if they have. Anybody coming back for more money would need to show how they spent money that we had already gave them. And because, if we're just throwing them X amount of dollars and then they want the same amount next year because that either was insufficient or will never be enough. You know, you need to get to the bottom of what exactly they need and how we can take care of it now instead of every year, or what kind of habits or changes in their policy we can change to make them not need that money anymore. But if they needed it, if they did need it, then yes, but case by case.
Okay. How would you characterize your position on personal property rights versus government regulation?
Can you repeat that, please?
How would you characterize your position on personal property rights versus government regulations?
Well, I think one of the great things about living in this country and in Alaska is that you can buy property and own property. And so I feel pretty strongly about the ownership of my property and the rights that I have that come with it. In tandem with most Valley folks, that is of the utmost importance to me, my personal property and my right to protect it, I guess.
What are your thoughts on zoning?
Zoning is necessary. I know that's a big thing that the borough does. It's necessary. Those are my thoughts.
Do you
Would you
think there
repeat-
should be
could-
more? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the very last part. Your last sentence was?
It's necessary.
Do you think there should be more gun ranges or less gun ranges in the borough, and why?
Well, there's the mod road. That's a good question. And a lot of the stuff, it's worth a couple of nights sleep thinking about, but on my feet. To take the mod road range, for example, that's out there. And it was kind of a blessing, some might say, because it's really cool and it's clean and it's managed and it's free. So people can go there and shoot, and it's a drive, but there are neighborhoods out there. So you're kind of leaving the main populace, but there are still people who probably don't like it. So it's a touchy subject. Whether or not we need more gun ranges in the borough, if the interest showed itself to be, if the majority showed itself to be more interested in a gun range, I would be okay with it. I'm skeptical just because I think that a lot of people wouldn't like it. As the closer it is to city limits, I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't like it. It would be very noisy. Grouse Ridge, I know a lot of the residents there were kind of tore up about that business when they opened up down there on Wasilla Fishhook. So I think it would involve asking local residents, people within a mile radius, half-mile radius, what they thought about the matter, and having meetings here and just seeing what people thought about it. Just as a personal answer, my personal answer is I don't need it, but some people may. I know a lot of places people go to shoot, and they don't need a gun range. You just have to drive out into the wild. So to me personally, it's not so important. But if the people say that it is, I'll talk.
One of the issues that comes up often is people who are worried about project or development changing, a project or development changing the character of their neighborhood. How would you approach a situation like that?
With sensitivity, because that's serious. That can ruin lives. And, eminent domain can be a tough subject. I do know what that is like. There have been proposals to put roads through where I live. And all I can do is sympathize. And if there are people whose lives would be ruined by putting a road in, I would at least lobby to have them taken care of more so than market value, for example, or find a way to accommodate people better. But a lot of these projects can be whittled down to a different solution, I think. Like a bypass road straight through the middle of town, or just, adjacent to the Parks Highway, where it would cut through this neighborhood and that neighborhood, but everybody would love it because less lights, less traffic, we're cutting the traffic in half. But is it worth it? If enough people are going to be out of a house because of it, I'd say no.
What kinds of legislation, if any, would you support to address the issue, any of the issues?
This particular issue that we were just talking about?
Sure.
Well, I would say that it just needs to be put to a vote to see if people want these major changes, and in the majority of the population, if they if they want these changes. And it need to be a large majority too. But whatever we can glean from the voices of people who don't want it to happen, I'd be very much interested in accommodating their needs. Like, that's important. You can't just put people out of their house because the greater good. Sometimes I think that the use of the phrase "the greater good" is dangerous, because just because it benefits more people than it affects poorly, sometimes those poor effects are just not worth it. So.
Are you aware that this appointment will only last until November 2025?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware if you are appointed, you must file an APOC financial disclosure form?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that the Borough Assembly meets at least twice a month and much more during the spring budget meetings?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Will you regularly be able to participate in assembly meetings that can last up until 11 or midnight?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you aware that that as an assembly member with issues coming before the assembly for a vote, you have to disclose financial and personal interests that could affect you or your family?
Yeah.
Okay. After hearing all these things and answering all these questions, are you still willing to serve if you are appointed?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything you would like to add before we finish?
I don't know if it's obvious, but I have no government experience, but I do feel that I would represent my district very well, and I would be a voice for the people, and I would always have their interests in mind. So I can be taught anything, I can learn anything, and I'll accept any challenge. So if you want to give me the position, I'll be happy to take it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Carling. You're welcome to stay here. You're welcome to go back upstairs. I'm not sure. Oh, go ahead. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in, being on the hot seat up there. I'm
Sure.
sure it's lots of fun.
Oh, it's all right.
I was just curious what got you interested in the position? Did somebody approach you about it? Did you just start hearing things about the assembly? What popped in your head to make you think this is maybe something I want to do?
It was pretty random. My wife was reading Alaska Watchman, and they had a article about it, and she said, "You should do this." And right off the bat, I was like, but it really does appeal to me. And, it just seemed like an opportunity to try. To just jump into trying to get elected for something that the thought of Future Mark doing that has entered my mind before, but this just kind of seemed like something that fell in my lap, and I wanted to go for it. I think this is an opportunity to serve and to learn.
You mentioned kind of how you would approach issues, trying to have an open mind and balanced, and that really important to you, I heard you say, is knowing the community's desires. And I just wonder how do you feel like you are in touch with those now, or how would you go about making sure that you know what the constituents in your district feel about an issue?
Talk and just be out there. I can't think of making a Mark Carling newsletter or something. I'd love it if it was that easy, but going to church, going out, talking to my friends, talking to my everyone. And I can see myself mingling a lot more with this position just because while I care about all my friends, right, I care about everybody because I want to know what I can do to make things the way they want it.
Assemblyperson Palmer?
Thank you so much for coming. Just to let you know, less than 2 years ago, I was in that exact same position, and took a lot of courage and knowing not knowing completely what sometimes asking is very could be nerve wracking, but at the same time, it's definitely an experience that I look back and say that was a very interesting one, and I still probably joke with some of the people here about it. I actually had the exact same question that Ms. Nauers asked you, which you already answered, and I appreciate it. But I think the question 9 that was asked, I think it was a very good question, but I think it'd be good if maybe someone who can explain better to me ask again, and I think that would be an answer that I would like to hear if somebody be okay with that.
Any objection that there be a question asked again?
Basically, if Nick can explain what that means, first class government versus what we currently have, I think that's it just makes our understanding what you, and I would like to hear your answer. That would be my request, please.
Sure.
You want me to?
Okay.
Sure. So we are currently a second class borough, which means we have very limited powers, about 5, that we do everywhere, which is everywhere in the borough, inside the cities and outside the cities. And then outside of the cities, we've got another list of maybe 15 things we can do. So that's non-area-wide powers, just because we're a second class borough. Okay. Moving to a first class borough would mean our area-wide powers, the things that we could do everywhere, including inside the cities, stay the same. But outside the cities, we can do anything not prohibited by law. Okay. So my favorite example is we could never legalize hard drugs because they're illegal by the state law, but we could do things that we currently don't do, such as police department, health department, restaurant inspections, robust regulation of businesses. You could do anything not prohibited by law, kind of like that's what Anchorage is, their home rule municipality. So it's a little bit different. So the difference between second class and first class borough is really the amount of power you have, the amount of government you provide or give to the people. Does anybody want more explanation, or is that?
Yeah, he made it even more complicated than I thought it would be. Basically, would you like to see borough have more or less powers, or keep the same as we currently have?
I lean towards limited government power, so I'd probably go that route, given the choice. It does sound interesting. I'm interested, though, just because, it seems like there's more opportunities outside the borough that way if we're elevated to more power. But at the moment, less government power is the way I lean.
Okay. Any Assemblyperson McKee?
You mentioned you hadn't been to any community council meetings, and I hadn't either. But I'm aware that the borough assembly meetings are on, you can hear them like watching TV. Do you ever do that?
No, but this is kind of news to me.
Yeah, I agree with you, but you know what, I got to tell you, just in hindsight, it would have been very valuable, because like Dimitri said, there's a lot of stuff you don't know. You're speaking out of line, as I do often anyway, still 3 years later. But get a clue. That's something, if you really want to get into this thing, find out how it works. This is how it works.
Okay, copy that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other follow-up? Okay, we ready then to go to the next candidate? Thank you, sir, for your
Thank you very
time, and
much.
thank you for applying. And as the clerk said, you're welcome to stay and hear the other candidates answer their questions, or you're free to go, or go back upstairs, whatever you'd like to do.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm going to go upstairs and get Mr. Sumner.
Okay.
Because I think it's very easy to understand on a daily basis.
Hello.
Be here in a minute. She's the one asking the questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And then the assembly some of the assembly may have follow-up, but the clerk mostly is doing the questions.
Okay.
Before we start with questions, would you like to give a brief moment to tell us about yourself?
Certainly. Maxwell Sumner, I'm sure you guys know that. I was born in Palmer. I grew up my whole life in Wasilla. I remember the first stoplight that came in on Main Street. I remember when getting Orange Julius's at Cottonwood Creek Mall. Like a lot of our young people, I saw more opportunity for education out of state. I left for college. Went to a school in California, then in Washington. In California, I was lucky enough to be part of a debate team. So we went to, every weekend we were traveling to a different state, different college, seeing debates. I saw a lot of different parts of the country, a lot of the East Coast, the West Coast, skipped a few of the Midwest states, but I can say there was, after seeing all that much of the country, I can say there was no place I'd rather live than Alaska. And I hated to admit that to myself because I wanted nothing better than to get out of the place that I grew up. So after I graduated, I came back here to Alaska and took over the family business with my brother, building houses. We build custom homes and semi-custom homes for people in the valley. I like to think we try our best to build a quality house and stand by our word and be ethical businessmen. Probably one of the most important things in my life is my wonderful, loving, beautiful wife, Anita, and my two children. I have a 6-year-old daughter, Blair, and a 3-year-old son, Blake. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
What do you think is the most important skill for an assembly member to have?
It's definitely a learned thing, I guess, but I would say, an open mind and a lack of ego, ability to, see an issue and listen to both sides of it and not come into it with any preconceived notions. You're not doing your constituents a very good service, not, holding up your oath if you're, not listening to everything or doing all the research necessary to make a determination on an issue.
What do you feel the role of local government should be, and how do you help accomplish that as an assembly member?
The Mat-Su borough is the easy answer is roads and schools, right? As a second-class borough, there's, collect taxes, make regulations, disperse taxes for roads and schools. In a broad sense, governing in a way that creates the most good for the most people and creates the least harm for the least amount of people.
What do you think your responsibility is to research issues coming before the assembly, and how would you approach that?
I think your responsibility as an assemblyman or woman would be doing your level best to be fully informed on the issue. I'm sure staff would do a great job preparing a lot of the information you would be necessary. I think talking to past assemblymen or maybe people in other jurisdictions or municipalities, if they've had similar issues and have similar ordinances, collecting information that way. And then of course, listening to your constituents. I'm sure if you become an assembly person, you get a lot of people sharing their opinions with you. So, listening to those and not having any bias or preconceived notions would be important.
Do you have something you would like to accomplish on the borough assembly, or is there an issue you would like to champion on behalf of the borough?
Not specifically. I'm happy that that some of the current assemblymen and women were a part of lowering the mill rate. Less taxes is always a good thing. More money in people's pockets, especially in these trying times where everything's more expensive. It's good to see that, that happen. I think, I think really, I think that government ordinances in general should be looked at periodically. So, the makeup and composition of the Matsu Borough today is not the same as it was 30, 40 years ago, not by a long shot. And what was, necessary and important back then and worked for people back then might not work today. I don't have the hubris to think that we know better than our forefathers, but, I think that almost everything should be looked at periodically to make sure that it's a good fit.
What is the most difficult decision or position you've been in during your professional career?
Something that jumps out at me immediately, not that there might be something longer ago that was more difficult, but my brother and I running our construction company were faced, during COVID, surprise, surprise, we're faced with some difficult decisions. I'm sure it's no news to anyone that, OSB was $60 a sheet at one point, up from 8 or 10. We had pretty ironclad contracts. We had started 6 different pre-sale houses that spring, contracts signed, people were expecting to pay a certain price, but of course our contracts had hyperinflation clauses and we could have exercised those clauses. We obviously have a responsibility to our families, a responsibility to our employees, a responsibility to our subcontractors and stakeholders to keep the doors open. It was a very, very difficult year, but we absorbed all the cost overruns and, held our word, kept to the price that we signed. Because that was, in my mind, that was the expectation of the clients when we signed those contracts.
What role do community councils, comprehensive plans, and the desires of the communities play in your decision-making?
Could you repeat that?
What role do community councils, comprehensive plans, and the desires of the communities play into your decision-making?
Those are distinct but similar things, right? I think kind of the order backwards. I think the community's desire is probably the most important thing, right? But it's really difficult to figure out what people want. That's why you have community councils, right? That's why you have public forums. Comprehensive plans. I've looked at some comprehensive plans. I will not say that I'm an expert on them by any means, but I've seen that there's survey data that goes into that. So that's, I would say I would weight comprehensive plans pretty heavily. Obviously, like ballot measures are really important because you actually get, the nearest approximation of what the will of the people is. You're not going to knock on every single door and get every single person to vote, to weigh in on an issue. And then community councils, they represent the communities. So I would definitely give them some weight, but I think I would, I don't think those are elected positions. And there's a lot of people that are too busy to show up to community councils. So I think I would definitely give them some weight, but I would probably, weigh, if there was a way to figure it out, weigh the community's desire more than the community council's desire, and especially if it was conflicting with the comprehensive plan.
Have you ever attended a community council meeting?
I have actually attended several in years past, Big Lake and Fishhook jump out at me. I will admit it was for things that affected my business, subdivisions and roads and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
What do you see the Matsu Borough doing really well, and what could the Matsu Borough do better?
You might disagree with me, but I think that our RSA contractors do a pretty darn good, especially these last couple of years, facing some pretty difficult winters, do a pretty good job of plowing the roads. I do like that it's I wish there's more people bidding them, but I do like that it's a privatized road maintenance. I think that private industry a lot of times can do things more effectively than government organizations, but more efficiently, I should say. And I think the borough holds people's property rights pretty well. The borough is not too restrictive, not too onerous. Allows people some personal liberties.
Would you be in favor of the borough becoming a first-class borough with more powers? Why or why not?
Not at this time. Same conversation. I think that I think that, people live here because, we have more liberty than a lot of other places. And I think that it's important to represent that.
Are there any current programs, policies, or actions of the Mat-Su Borough that you disagree with?
Not specifically. I think there's a lot of things that could be done better. Certain ordinances looked at, but by and large, I think that I agree with most of the ones I'm aware of anyway.
When you look overall at the aspects of the borough, what are the biggest risks the borough faces?
I mean, I can think of a couple. On the forefront of my mind is fuel supply, cooking, like gas shortage. We're running out of ways to heat our houses and keep the lights on. That's very real. It's really happening. The economy, we have historically been a bedroom community. I would really love to see the borough, the Mat-Su borough, be able to stand on its own 2 feet. I think we're really close to being self-sufficient, having a self-sufficient economy. I wish, I hope we can be attractive to more industry and businesses, but, developed in a responsible way. And, I think those, and probably affordable housing. I mean, that's probably a big one, the one I see all the time, the opportunity that, everyone on the board I see here, you guys are not young, no offense. I mean, you're probably not starting out in your life, you probably are all homeowners, I'm a builder, and I have people that meet with me, and what people that are working really hard, working good jobs, have worked to get to the positions where they're at, and they're young, they did not have the opportunity that we had. Getting housing, which is the American dream, is so far away and unattainable for a lot of them. It's depressing to see,
The borough has tourism like B&Bs, fishing, hunting, etc., and there are natural resource development activities as well, with things like gravel mining and the rail extension. What is your opinion on those industries and whether they can coexist or not?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Borough has tourism like B&Bs, fishing, and hunting, and there are natural resource development activities as well, with things like gravel mining and the rail extension. And what is your opinion on those industries and whether they can coexist or not?
I like all those industries. I wish we had more. I do think they can coexist. I mean, if you think about, go look at Hatcher's Pass. A lot of people go and visit Independence Mine, Kennecott Mine. Resource development is a very very big part of Alaska's history. Tourism, people are coming to see some of that history. A lot of the places I've visited around the state have been places of resource development activity. I think that obviously you need to protect adjacent homeowners' property rights and values, but responsible development is key.
Excluding the port, in your opinion, what are the opportunities for development of a more sustainable economy in the Mat-Su borough and also within your district?
Well, this is one that's data centers. That's a one that I kind of have dreamed about, because a big part of the cost of running data centers, especially with this AI explosion, is keeping them cool. One thing we have in abundance is cold temperatures up here sometimes. So, I think that it actually make a lot of sense for data centers, and especially with the AI explosion, to relocate up here. We just have to make it, make it look inviting, so to speak, for them. And then, a natural gas line would be great to be hooked up over Point McKenzie. But I guess that's partially using the port, right? But yeah, that's the dream that's been a dream for many, many years.
Given the option to bond and construct a project now, or delay construction and forward fund by saving, which should the borough choose?
That's a difficult question because I think it's there's a lot more to it than that. I really respect and I applaud for what the borough's done for funding schools and not getting bonds lately. But there's also a civic argument that today's taxpayers shouldn't foot the bill for something that's going to benefit the future taxpayers. And that's why bonds exist. I mean, I think it's a pretty easy decision if we have the cash and there's high interest rates to spend the money we got now, but I think it really depends also on how long you would have to delay the thing you're trying to buy and how much benefit it is to the public, and what the current debt situation is, I mean, it would be really great to have that debt number at zero. I wish the federal government was run that way.
Consider a lake about 150 acres in size. About half of the people living on the lake want to ban personal watercraft, and about half want them to be allowed. What would you do with that? Ban them or allow them?
Well, I'm kind of having trouble envisioning how big 150 acres is in comparison to other lakes. Do you have an example of what lake would be 150 acres?
I do not.
Anyone know how big a lake is?
We have a discussion.
You would think as a builder I would know that, right? I know really well what 1 acre looks like, okay? Sorry, that's off topic. I think 50-50. I mean, that's an easy answer, status quo, I think you would probably, people that bought property and houses on that lake had the expectation it was going to remain that way. They made the biggest purchase decision of their life and a big investment. Like, how can you change it? I think you would probably want to collect more information, like probably talk to Alaska Department of AKDEC, Fish and ADF&G, have some more. If there's any other stakeholders, like an important question is there public access? Is there a public beach? Is there a comprehensive plan? You guys brought that up. Is there a lake management plan that affects this thing? That's, but otherwise status quo.
When someone calls and is very upset about their assessed value going up, what are you going to tell that angry constituent?
Hey, it's a joke, but I mean, hey, think how much richer you are now. No, I'd probably listen. I'd listen to their concerns. I would get them in touch. I mean, I'm guessing as an assembly person, that's probably a pretty often call during property tax time. So I'm sure I would have the information for disputing your property tax assessment on speed dial, or conduct card I give them. Give them some advice on how to dispute it, and listen to their concerns. I mean, a lot of times people just want to vent.
How do you deal with the school district coming in and asking for additional funding every year?
I mean, I guarantee you they do it every year. But you definitely want to make sure that it's in line with the growth in students and inflation, and then you would. You would want to ask some difficult questions of them too. Is how are you performing, and how is this money going to increase the educational opportunity for the students? And if the school district is failing those things, then I think you should probably not necessarily cut their funding, because I mean the students are really. I mean, our children's education is one of the most vital things one of the most important jobs the assembly has. But maybe get a. I mean, thoughts crossed my mind before, getting an outside efficiency consultant for the borough, saying, okay, yeah, but here's an extra $100,000 to look at your processes and see where we can tighten this thing up.
How would you characterize your position on personal property rights versus government regulations?
I mean, the right to swing my fists ends when my fist hits your nose. I think that everyone should be afforded, personal liberties in their own property, but that means everyone, including your neighbors. You should not be infringing upon your neighbors' right to enjoy their property either. And that's as a contentious issue, you know, where that line is, you know. So I guess not a simple answer there.
What are your thoughts on zoning?
I don't think the time is right for the borough to have zoning. I think unfortunately we might eventually be there. You know, might eventually be a necessary evil. I think that maybe, you know, I don't know if any other jurisdictions have done it, but there might be ways of doing economic signaling, you know, property tax abatement or increases if you're building out of zone, you know, rather than hard rules. Because I mean, the valley has had no real plan. You know, I mean, it's difficult to say, let's just go zone the whole valley, because you're going to be picking winners and losers, and you know who's picking those winners and losers. You know, like I would definitely have to recuse myself because I have interests. You know, so I wouldn't have to have that responsibility if I was on the assembly, but I'm guessing you guys would. You know, so I mean, yeah, I would before we got to zoning, I would think that some more creative options for responsible development in the valley should be explored or looked into and researched.
Do you think there should be more gun ranges or less gun ranges in the borough, and why?
You know, I'm not aware of how many gun range applications there have been, if the gun ranges are meeting demand or not. You know, I think that there should be enough gun ranges to meet demand. I think that, you know, I've never actually, I mean, and I'm a shooter and I own a lot of guns, and I've never thought, man, I wish I had another gun range here. I don't think they should be specifically, you know, I think there should be a conditional land use permit process for them, but I do not think they should be outright banned, you know.
Okay. One of the issues that comes up often is people who are worried about a project or a development changing the character of their neighborhood. How would you approach that?
Can you repeat the question?
One of the issues that comes up often is people who are worried about a project or development changing the character of their neighborhood. How would you approach a situation like that?
I mean, I think you need to color within the lines of the law, but I mean, there's a lot, I mean, people like to be heard. I mean, you definitely at the very minimum, need to listen to their concerns in a public forum, you know. But if there's not a specific ordinance or violation, you know, then ultimately, you know, the development must go forward, you know. So, yeah, you know, protect property rights, but that includes for the people that are trying to develop their property.
What kinds of legislation, if any, would you support to address the issue?
I don't know. That's an open-ended question, because I don't know what, you know, you have to know what specific legislation there was being put forward. But I mean, you know, we don't have currently we don't have a building permit. We don't have a permit to develop your property. You know, there is a subdivision construction manual that outlines how you can subdivide and what rules you must follow to do it. I would be I am inherently wary of any new regulations or ordinances. You know, they have to be supported by, you know, the majority of the people, I think.
Are you aware this appointment only lasts until November 2025?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that if you are appointed, you must file an APOC financial disclosure form?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that the Borough Assembly meets at least twice a month and much more than that during the spring budget meeting?
Yes.
Budget meetings, excuse me. Will you regularly be able to participate in the Assembly meetings that can last until 11 or midnight?
Yes.
Are you aware that as an Assembly member with issues coming before the Assembly for a vote, you have to disclose financial and personal interests that could affect you or your family?
Yes.
After hearing all these things and answering all these questions, are you still willing to serve if you are appointed?
Absolutely.
Do you have anything to add before we finish?
Nope. I hope you guys choose me, and I look forward to helping serve on the Assembly.
Okay, yes, and follow up, Assembly Person Hours.
Thank you for coming down and being up there. I guess I appreciate if we choose you that we don't have to come up with a new sign, because we got Sumner soon from from previous times, so it makes it easy.
Yeah, that's a budget savings, right?
Yeah, at least $2 right there. I just wondered what got you interested. I know you've served in other places in the community. What got you interested in this position?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's probably not a shock to you guys. My brother, was on the assembly. Him, I definitely, I think like I think a lot of people think that local politics might be unattainable or, not the right fit, or it's for other people. Jesse serving made me realize that if everyone thinks that way, then it's the people that think they have the time that are up there serving, or people that have special interests, and those might not be the people you want.
And I really appreciate you brought up energy, but another issue that has come before us a lot is developments that go in next to homes and whether the neighbors have a right to a public hearing to discuss significant developments, the type that could impact the property owner's value or use of their property. Where do you come down on, whether and when a neighbor should be entitled to a public hearing to sort out, the impacts of a proposed development?
I mean, that's a difficult question. I'm a builder and I have done developments. I also think that, I think that a lot of people move to the valley to enjoy the liberties that we have. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, fortunately we have those liberties. And part of that is that there is no real zoning, there should be some expectation when you buy your house in a neighborhood that, hey, I'm buying an acre lot, but what's behind me? What's on the road coming towards me? And I realize that's easy to say there should be that expectation, but no one in actuality thinks that, that this meat processing plant's going in behind my house on this vacant lot. No one expects that, I personally know there was a grow operation that went in on the end of my neighborhood, I did not like it, but I supported it. I didn't go out and speak out about it because I thought, hey, I knew there was a big parcel there with a big warehouse, and what do you know? Someone bought it. I think that it's important for people's voices to be heard, and I think there is a process and there is a planning commission.
Assemblyperson Hale.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for being here. So recently, we've been talking a lot about special use districts, which are effectively a localized zoning ordinance. Have you been following that at all?
I've heard about it a little bit, yeah.
How would you approach a community council that came to you asking you to help them with develop a special use district?
I would, man, that's a tough one because I thought it was still pretty gestational. I'm not fully aware of the ins and outs of it. I think that, like I was saying, I think there's, economic signaling. I think if I told you where is the medical zone in Wasilla, it's pretty easy. It's Sewer Meridian, so we're by the hospital. Right now the free market's solving for some of the zoning issues. It's not a perfect system by any means, but I would say special use districts that are non-restrictive. I don't want to diminish anyone's property values is the problem with making, and if someone has a lot that has no restrictions on it, adding restrictions, is diminishing the property value. So that's why I say, economic signaling would be better served than a hard line.
Assemblyperson McKee.
Kind of like what Tim was talking about. We get a lot of stuff on this very issue of the Z word kind of thing. You used the words that come up with some creative options. It would be a real blessing to this entire community if you could give a couple of those. Because we have some things in place. Like LMPs and LIDs and stuff like that.
My thought is, if you do have to, if we are going forward with zoning, if it's going to have to happen, don't make it restrictive, right? If you're building an industrial building in an industrial zone, you pay the normal property tax.
Yeah.
If you build an industrial building in a residential zone, then you are paying higher property tax, and that will not completely, and I don't know if that's legal. I think you have to talk to the borough attorney about that. But, and that's what, I mean, I've had this thought before. It's like, well, it really sucks if you own a property that's not restricted and it's in your family and you think you have this asset, and then the borough comes in and says, never mind, we just cut your property value in half, But, it wouldn't be cutting your property value in half if you could still do it. It's just you paying more property tax. And it would naturally push people to build in the industrial zones or the commercial zones or the multifamily zones. And I think that, unfortunately, I mean, I think everything abutting a major state road, I do not think you should make that, directly abutting should probably not be zoned restrictively if it's not already having CCNRs that do restrict it.
Thanks.
Yes, Assemblyperson Gamble, go ahead.
Hey, Max, thanks for coming out. I saw in your application that you are currently serving on the MEA board.
Yes.
If you're selected to the assembly, are you going to continue to serve on MEA, or are you going to resign and just do the assembly? And if you are planning on staying on the MEA board, can you just explain to me, because I'm not familiar with it, how it works and what kind of a commitment that is?
I mean, yeah, I've considered this before I applied. I would definitely consult with the borough attorney. I would consult with the MEA board attorney. Before I did anything rash. I do not believe there's any inherent conflict there. I know that at one point Mayor DeVilbiss served on the MEA board and was the borough mayor, and that was during a contentious time when there was a coal plant that MEA was wanting to build, and I think the assembly was against it. So I think there's probably less contentious for me to be an assembly member and on the MEA board. I'm conflicted about that. I would like to serve on both boards if possible and if time allows, because I was just reelected, and I made a commitment, a 4-year commitment to the constituents. I think the people that voted for me. I think that I think that it goes hand in hand, the assembly and the MEA board, because ultimately you're looking for safe, reliable, and affordable power for your ratepayers. Well, it just so happens that this is my MEA district is pretty well overlaps the assembly district that I'm applying for here. And, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Low rates are good for people, so are low property taxes and efficient government. It's kind of the same thing.
Assemblyperson Fauna.
Thank you again. Recently, I actually learned that ATC, which is Adult and Teen Challenge, a nonprofit organization that's here, and we recognize them, and we've done a lot of partnership and cleaning up and things like that. Some of those guys actually do some training and some work with your company, and I wanted you to share the experience and what it's that been like, and would you learn from that, having those guys who go through recovery, being able to try to teach them a skill or putting them back slowly into society, I guess you would say.
It's been really great. I mean, it's taught me that, everyone makes mistakes and everyone should be given a second chance. We've had a lot of guys that have, I didn't know anyone knew about that, but, we have adult, you guys are familiar with Adult and Teen Challenge, but it's a local nonprofit that helps people with substance abuse issues. And they have a program where people go, and some of the people that are in treatment go and, are basically laborers. And we have a lot of the guys that have come to work for us. And then after they've got, graduated, they've come to work for us full time. And they've been some of the best employees I've ever had, so it's great. And it's great to see them, because there's a lot of people that won't hire ex-convicts or, people with drug habits, and a lot of times drug habits go hand in hand with theft. It was I'm not going to say I was it was all altruism that made me start it. It was because a pastor who's a friend of mine was the director of the Adult and Teen Challenge at the time, talked me into it. But it was it's been a really great experience, and and beneficial to us for having great employees.
Further, okay, Assemblyperson McKee.
One of my really big passions is education. I've been doing that for a long time, quarter of a century actually. And I noticed you were when we were thinking, I think equality in your resume, I think equality education for our next generation is one of the most important duties of the local government. And then, of course, we had the question, what do you do when the school board comes, or the school district comes to you every year and says, we want more money? And I liked your answer about, well, show us what you did with what we gave you the last time. And then I may have misunderstood a remark. It seemed like I heard you say something about giving them an extra 100,000 K to fix it.
Oh, yeah.
I got to tell you, I voted against their budget this year, not because I'm, usually you hand over your heart, it's for the children. Well, sometimes a kick in the butt is what people need to get reoriented. So that's kind of why I did that, not because I don't like kids. What do you think?
Well, I was saying that, when I was in college, one of the jobs I interned at was a consulting firm, and they did efficiency consulting, where you come into an organization and just because it's a bureaucracy like a school district doesn't mean it's any different than that much different than a company. There are places, levers you can pull to make things more efficient. I mean, obviously, a school district is not the same as corporate America, but what I was saying is that give them an extra $100,000 to go hire a consulting firm to see where their money is being wasteful. Go spend some time at the schools and actually look at what their processes are. And
I'm going to apply for that job.
so what?
I'm going to apply for that job. You have that consulting firm to go and look at the school district and see why it's not working. Throwing money every year ain't happening. So it looks to me like you're on the right track. Thank you.
Alrighty, I guess.
Well, thank you very much. You're welcome to stay. Oh, did Assemblymember Bernier, did you have something?
Yeah,
Telephone.
I just wanted his opinion of mobile homes and where does he shoot at?
I mean, I think manufactured homes currently are not allowed in the borough, unless I'm mistaken. But I think a lot of them are grandfathered in, like new manufactured homes. I mean, I don't know if anyone can answer that, but I think that, affordable housing we need some affordable housing. I think everyone can agree on that. So I think that if they are not currently allowed, which I think they're not, then I think we should take a hard look at that. I wouldn't commit one way or the other until I had all the facts.
Further comments? Okay, questions? No? Everybody, we're ready to move on?
Okay. Mr. Sumner, you're welcome to stay here in the room or welcome to go back upstairs or whatever you'd like to do.
Did the other people stay?
I do believe he left.
Oh, okay. Well, I need a drink of water and I'll be back.
Okay. Be right back.
Okay.
Oh, my octopus friend, I watched it. I love octopuses. It's like features as well. I like it both ways. Alive and grilled. Oh, you boil it, marinate it, and it's over.
Madam Clerk?
I'm going to be the one asking the questions. Before we start with questions, would you like to give a brief moment to tell us about yourself?
Sure. I put most of my credentials and things on the document that I gave you earlier. My name is Colleen Vague. I have been in the Valley for almost 30 years now, and I've been involved in some land use issues, and that resulted in I became a member of the, was asked to become and agreed to become a member of the Planning Commission, which I was on for 6 years. I was a Planning Commission chair for 5 of those 6 years. I was also elected to the school board, and that's where I met Mr. Dunleavy, and was the president of the school board for my final year as I served on that. I was on the ethics committee. Jay Nolfi appointed me to the ethics board, and then I was appointed after that to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. I was also on a community council out in Kinnick Fairview area and was part of the SPUD process for the sled dog unit out there. Spent a lot of time working on that. So I have a really good background in various forms of the government process, and I'm pretty familiar with how things go and the meeting and Robert's rules and all those kinds of things. So that's one of the reasons why I felt like I would be a good candidate for this position.
What do you think is the most important skill for an assembly member to have?
I think it's important to have a strong commitment to what you feel, but be willing to change that if facts and information is presented to you. Being able to listen and empathize and understand what people are saying. People don't come to the assembly. I learned this certainly when I was involved with an issue for the assembly, but also on the planning commission. People tend to live their lives. They're busy. They want to move on until something is very important to them. And then they want to come and they absolutely want to be heard. They don't want to think that, oh, I'm coming here and wasting my time because everybody already has made up their mind. So it's nice to have a viewpoint. It's nice to have an opinion, but it's actually very important to be willing to listen to what's being told and maybe change that viewpoint or make adjustments to it. And the willingness to do that, I think, is an important part of serving the people in the community as an assembly member.
What do you feel the role of local government should be, and how do you help accomplish that as an assembly member?
Well, local government is really important in that it's the closest thing to the community as far as making rules. We all want to jump to the presidential campaigns, but a lot of the rules and things that are done at that level don't affect us on a daily basis. The assembly does. The decisions that are made here, the taxes that are made, the ordinances that are proposed, the resolutions that are set forth, those have a daily impact on the people's lives here in the community. And I think that, then going back to the first question, is why it's so important to have a viewpoint, have an opinion, have your character and what you really feel is important but also recognize that you're not serving yourself, you're serving the people. And a willingness to listen to what they want, because they're the ones that ultimately should be allowed to have a huge voice in the governance of their daily lives. And as the people that are closest to that and make those decisions for them, I think it's important that we recognize our decisions are the most impactful to the people day to day. And so they have to be thought out very carefully and considered very carefully when people are here to talk to you and address their concerns.
What do you think your responsibility is to research issues coming before the assembly, and how would you approach that?
Nobody knows everything. I certainly know that. There's a long history of most of the issues that are coming before you. I was just here at a meeting earlier, and the issue of a spud came forward, and that's something I did 20 years ago. So understanding that others that are around you may have good historical information about the hows and the whys and the wheres that these special issues are coming forward. So asking people who have historical knowledge, certainly Ms. DeVries has that. You know, she's been involved in a lot of things. I would go to those people. That would be a first thing. I would also go and look at previous ordinances, things that have been recalled, for what reason. And as new people move in, sometimes we find ourselves in repetition. It's like there's a reason why we had that ordinance and then it was revoked and we removed that ordinance because of different things that happened. So looking at historical documentation, talking to people who have good historical information, also looking, you know, online and finding out if there's a, when I know that when the particulates, when that ordinance was coming through, and we're looking at wood burning stove and particulates. I didn't know anything about particulates and what they could do, but I know that there are things online that can help me understand that and can give you a better information about what harmful particulates are, what the sizes are, what that means. I think it's important to become informed about things when you're making decisions, again, that are going to impact people on a daily basis. Whether or not people are allowed to burn stoves or wood burning stoves, that's a huge deal because that's how people heat their houses sometimes. So becoming very well informed about the positives and the negatives and how that all came about, and certainly with knowing the history of the area and the people that are coming before you. I just think all of those are good things to get good history and understanding of issues that come before the assembly, sorry.
Do you have something you would like to accomplish on the Borough Assembly, or is there an issue you would like to champion on behalf of the Assembly?
In the time that I've lived up here, and you know, I'm relatively new. It's 30 years I've been here, and I've seen a lot of changes. The one thing that has been the most frustrating for me is the lack of future vision. I would really like to see some kind of a comprehensive plan, and I know we have one that goes out there. But I think in a lot of ways it doesn't go far enough. One of the issues with the Planning Commission that we dealt with was what to do with the Crevasse Marine Trail because of the land use that was there. How much of that was being taken up, and the arguments and the issues with, well, that's one of our rural trails that we use, and we like to have that trail there. But again, going back to the history, it wasn't very well defined. And now we're looking at that is a space that's going to disappear. So I think that letting people know, that was an historical thing, again, that has been there, and but we're looking down, we're making more garbage as we're having more people here. This is just an example. And so I think it's important that we look at, okay, at some point, we're going to lose the Crevasse Marine Trail, and then what? Because we're losing that space at a much faster rate than we anticipated. So I think that we really need to take a look at that, and as the continuing to be fastest growing area in this state, I think it's really important to make plans that will maintain the character of the community. More and more people are moving here from Anchorage, have some of those things set, but 10 and 20 years isn't far enough. We need to be looking at 50 years, because in the 30 years I've been here, a lot of things have taken place that we completely did not understand. We're now looking at Bogard Road. We're going to have to make that a 4-lane road probably. And it was a country road this is before Selden was even punched through when I moved up here. Nobody considered that that was going to be a main thoroughfare. And now we're looking at how we're going to buy the property that we need for that. Are we going to have to take an eminent domain? All of those things are things that we could have foreseen, because 20 years ago, when Darcy Salmon was the mayor, he was talking about, I'm going to go buy up a bunch of property on Bogard Road because I know that the state's going to have to buy that. Nothing happened. So he saw that coming. It certainly was 20 years down the road. Now here we are 20 years later, and we are looking at another 20 years before that road is going to be made to capacity. It's already currently in failure at certain times of the day, as was the Palmer-Wasilla Highway. And then we had to put in, 12, 14 stoplights? That did not help the transportation, which is one of the government's major things, is in addition to safety, is also transportation for commerce. And now we've got roads that are in failure, that people don't want to drive at certain times of the day, that postpone you. So one of the things I would like to see is a comprehensive plan that moves out farther than it does and really takes into consideration the location and the population growth that we are expected to have.
What is the most difficult decision or position you've been in during your professional career?
I've had a long professional career. So, I guess when I was working for, I was working in a position and liked my boss a lot, thought she was a wonderful person. But as the years went by, I discovered that she was doing something that was probably, well, it was unethical for sure. I had some doubts about the legalities of it. And making the decision about, do I stay at a job where I've been, that I really like, and continue to work with this person, or do I go because I have a hard time working for people that I don't respect? And I elected to leave that position, took a lower paying position, and some things that occurred. But I have to like and trust and respect my superiors, because I'm having to follow their guidelines. And if I don't respect what they're doing, that puts me in a problem of doing unethical things or bordering on that or trying to work around it. Or what eventually can happen is you start to talk about the boss and you start to form sides, I'm on her side, I'm not on her side. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want none of that. And so I chose to leave that position, and I actually for a period of time took a position that was significantly less in pay, but it was what I felt I needed to do.
What role do community councils, comprehensive plans, and the desires of the communities play into your decision making?
They're huge. I've served on the board of a community council, on the planning commission. Community councils, those are the people who have decided how they want their community to grow and develop. And if you ignore them, well, what are you doing? Why are you even in your position if you're not going to look towards and follow the desires of the people in the community councils? They're not well attended. I know that. I know that they are only well attended when issues come forward, and then that's when you get the full scope of who's out there and what they want. And that's a problem. And I wish there was a way to encourage people to become more involved in their community councils. But I've been in 3, and it's just very difficult. We send out information, we try to inform people, but again, until something occurs that's going to directly affect someone, they will not. People are busy. They don't want to go to another meeting that's, can be long and arduous and sometimes boring. So, but they will come out when there's an issue that affects them. And that's also when they come here. But regardless of that, they have come together as a community and set what they want their future community to look like and how they want it to develop. And if we don't address and respect and acknowledge that, then we're not serving our purpose. Then the assembly is not serving the purpose of the community.
I think you already answered the next question. Have you ever attended a community council meeting?
Oh, yes.
What do you see the Matsu Borough doing really well, and what could the Matsu Borough do better?
I think that the Matsu Borough does a really good job with our education. I really like our school board right now. I think that they've made some really good decisions, and I support much of what they do. I think that our test scores are going up. I have 2 kids that have been through that system, and now I have a grandson that's in that system. And I really have very little that I can think of that I would say that is a negative about the Matsu Borough Education Department. What I think we're not doing very well is transportation. I think we're not looking for the thoroughfares. We're not taking action quickly enough. We are not investing enough in our roads. And I think that's evident in the traffic jams and, any day at 5:30 to 6:30, Parks Highway is a mess. Any day after school, you've got Bogart's a mess. It's very difficult to get through this community from one side to another, which shouldn't take more than about 30 minutes to get from Palmer to Wasilla. But there are times when it can take a long time. And that diminishes the ability to do commerce and to take care of business when okay, I got to plan an hour for this, so I've got to leave my job way earlier than I should, not doing what I'm being paid to do, to transport and get this other activity done. So I would say that I would like to see better road system, better road conditions. Again, that goes with the whole planning and comprehensive plan. But I think right now our education system's doing really well.
Would you be in favor of the borough becoming a first-class borough with more powers? Why or why not?
So there's a yes and no. Okay. I think the system right now is pretty much working. I don't have any complaints with that. First-class borough obviously gives the mayor more authority and brings in probably more federal funds to the system. I'm not a big person to want a lot of change, though, and I think that the system as we have it right now is working, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Are there any current programs, policies, or actions of the Matsu Borough that you disagree with?
I'm probably not familiar enough with all of them. The ones of which I am familiar, again, I think as long as we have an assembly that's listening to the people, and that certainly was evident the other night that that's going on, and that we're making those considerations. I don't have any that I could come up right now and say, oh, that's a horrible thing going on. So no, I would say not really, of the ones that I know.
When you look overall at all aspects of the borough, what are the biggest risks the borough faces?
The biggest risks are a lack of opportunity, that we don't have any industrial kind of future impact for our young people to participate in. If we don't encourage that and develop that and plan that out and make it so that, okay, well, growth is great, except that we haven't planned for the road system to accommodate that, then you'll have people that will leave. I also feel like, politically, we have a favorable position in that people that are here that like it and they want to stay here. But if you don't grow and develop, communities eventually stop growing and then they die. And so we have to continue to accept the growth, but we have to accommodate for that. And that's something, again, we're not really great at. We don't like to make long-term future plans. We very much believe, and it's not a bad thing, that, people can do what they want on their property. And that's true until you get more and more population. And then what you do on your property starts to affect the neighbors. So that can be accommodated with better road systems, better services, so that people don't have to drive as far. The notion that we have about 40,000 people every day that clutter our highway to Anchorage in order to go to work so that they can meet the financial needs of their family, I think is a problem. And I think that we need to take on that. What are we going to do to encourage that development and encourage that growth and allow our people to stay here throughout the day, and yet maintain the property rights that people expect? And I think that takes a lot of future planning, and I just don't think we've done that very well.
The borough has tourism like B&Bs, fishing, hunting, etc., and there are natural resource development activities as well with things like gravel mining and rail extension. What is your opinion on those industries and whether they can coexist or not?
Oh, I think they can coexist. They have been. As things grow and develop, I think, again, that's one of those, you have to take that growth and development into and accommodate those needs. We certainly have the tourism and the outdoor activities that, in extension here, there's no doubt that we have that. I'm talking about roads, building roads, got to have concrete to do that. So there are certain things that, whether you like it or not, they're going to have to coexist. We just have to find a way to make that happen with the least amount of impact to the people, or so that they understand that the impact that you make. Again, when I was on the planning commission, we elected to put cell phone towers all the way from here to Fairbanks, and that was one of those very contentious. Nobody likes a cell phone tower in their view site. I agree with that, but you know what they did want? They wanted cell phone service all the way to Fairbanks. So you have to make those reasonable assessments of need, and then allow the population to understand with what you want also comes these other things that have to be addressed. And, we can take them off as far as we can, but the phone service was requesting that. They were getting the land for it, and we approved those in order to meet the needs of the people. And yeah, we also had to accommodate that and let the other populations, especially the people that were affected by those the view shed things, understand it has to be done. And we'll try to accommodate that. We'll try to make them as low visibility as possible. But progress is going to happen, and people wanted the progress.
Excluding the port, in your opinion, what are the opportunities for development of a more sustainable economy in the Mat-Su Borough and also within your district?
So I think that there are some industrial things that need to be accommodated. We need to be more favorable for business to come out here. We need to let them know, if you want to come out here and do business, you're not going to be shut down because the neighbors don't like you. And I think that happens, that we've had businesses that have initially started to come out, and then because people were complaining about that. And that's where having a long-term plan and having some consideration for, the needs of the people and the wants of the people, and how to make those two come together in some kind of a negotiation. So again, we've got, truly, it's around 40,000 vehicles a day that travel to Anchorage every day to just do simple things like work for the oil industry, go to job for, Conoco. And there's no need for us not to encourage development in this area for large businesses like that to start to look into investments in this area. I think that there was also just development of oil in this land and in this area was something that was considered for a period of time that's now sort of been debunked. I haven't heard about it for a while. The railroad, we've got the spur extension, and that hasn't been done. It's been on the market just for 25 years. It's been in the plan since the port was there. And, building that would be another opportunity. But anytime you incorporate industry and business, you also have the construction that goes with that. And that includes roads that have to be built, that includes buildings that have to be built. So if we were encouraging more large businesses that do business already up here, Amazon was a stretch, but there are other industries that can come up here and work, especially now that we have a large warehouse ability. You don't have to go to the store often. So incorporate and encourage a more warehouse building for those kinds of online sales kinds of things. Again, now you've got the building that has to be built, you have the roads that have to be built, you have other things for people to in the community in order for them to take a step back and go, yeah, I got a job out here, and I got a job probably for the next 8 or 10 years that I can support my family on.
Given the option to bond and construct a project now, or delay construction and forward fund by saving, which should the borough choose?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Given the option to bond and construct a project now, or delay construction and forward fund by saving, which should the borough choose?
It would depend on what the business is and what it provides to the community. Bonding goes to the vote of the people. And I would always choose to have things go to a vote of the people for things like that. So I certainly think that bonding could be a possibility, especially given if we're trying to develop and encourage more development for better economy in the community. If that fails, then you save until you have the money and forward fund that. I think that looking at what the opportunity is and placing that before the people to help them decide how they want to support that financially is what the direction you need to go.
Consider a lake about 150 acres in size. About half of the people living on the lake want to ban personal watercraft, and about half want them to be allowed. What would you do with that? Ban them or allow them?
Is it 50% now or is it 75%? I know for a while it was 75% had to approve for any kind of a thing like that. Where is the lake self-contained or is it part of a water system? Are there other people that need to use that as a system to get from one location to another? I mean, I don't want to not give you an answer to that, but I think that there are a lot of other things that would have to be incorporated into that. Because 50-50, neither one should be able to determine what the other half of the people want to do. So I thought it was 75, but I might be completely wrong about that. Again, taking that to the public, because there are so many other things involved with that. Are you talking about gas watercraft? Or are you talking about non-gas watercraft? Are you talking about, is it part of a system where other people are using it, either for recreation or commerce or trade? There are a lot of things to consider when looking at, it's a 100-acre lake, and you got 50 and 50. More than the population that surround that lake are involved in what takes place at that lake. So I would want to hear more information about that before I would make an ultimate decision. 100 acres is not a huge lake, and small craft would certainly, especially if you had a shutdown time, would be something that would be acceptable. But I would want to have more information on that before I made an ultimate decision about something like that.
Okay. When someone calls and is very upset about their assessed value going up, what are you going to tell that angry constituent?
The first thing that I would do is explain where the property taxes go. A lot of times, especially people that are retired or don't have kids in school, they don't care that we need money for education. I would certainly recommend that they go to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals and discuss it with them and share the reason why they feel like their property taxes are too high. That's the place where a lot of those decisions are made. And so having them be allowed to have the opportunity to talk to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, be able to share that, have the assessors there, have all the parties present that can make any changes to that, I think is a direction that I would suggest they go after explaining about where property taxes go and what they're used for.
How do you deal with the school district coming in and asking for additional funding every year?
Well, I did that. as a school district grows, and just in case you might not be fully aware of this, we are the only large school district in the state that is growing. Anchorage is shrinking, Fairbanks is shrinking, Juneau is shrinking. People are moving out of those areas, and I think the ones in Anchorage, many of them are coming up here. With the influx of additional students, it's natural that the cost of education is going to go up. I think that's the thing that needs to be considered. If I was in Anchorage and I saw that I had 1,000 fewer students and they were asking me for $2 million more, that would be a huge question. But in this area, where the school population is going up, and we want to serve those students because those students are going to be building our roads and they're going to be starting our businesses, and we want to make sure that they're well educated. I think that it's a natural process to then ask for larger funds in order to accommodate the influx of the students. If we're just doing that because we want more money or we want a larger pile of money at the end, savings, there was a time when we could only have a 2% of our budget in savings at the end of the year. I think that has changed, but I don't believe that we need to have school funding for a savings account. I believe it needs to be funding to accommodate the education of our student body.
How would you characterize your position on personal property rights versus government regulations?
I've been involved in a lot of those. And I own property and I want to do what I want to do on my property. I think that some of that stops when what you are doing on your property has a huge negative impact on the neighbors. And that's always where property issues come into play. Everybody wants to do what they want to do on their property. And at some point, you know, that saying, when your fist reaches my nose, then there's a problem. I think that most things can be negotiated. And I think that most people don't want to cause conflict with their neighbor. And I think that if we can get neighbors talking and making those concessions that need to be made, I think that people, I don't want I'm with you on, or with what a lot of the community is, that's why I still live here. I own a piece of property, I pay taxes on it, I paid a lot of money for it, and I want to be allowed to enjoy my life and enjoy my time on my property the way I want to do that. So, yeah, I guess I'm going to stop there.
What are your thoughts on zoning?
On zoning?
On zoning.
It's too late in the valley to think about zoning. That would be a complicated, arduous, impossible task. I think that we need planning, and again, not so much in the sense of telling people what to do on their property, but I do think we need to have better planning in the process of allowing people to move from one place to another with minimum difficulty. I think that we have come to a position now where we recognize certain areas as being commercial and we recognize certain areas as being rural. And unfortunately, because it was so rural and so we just sort of accepted that we haven't made those concessions for, we need to purchase land. The government needs to purchase land where we see the growth is happening. And that may take some land out of the hands of the population because we need to buy, roads, and we need to buy easements, and we need to buy all those things that go with that development so that we can continue to have people travel through our community and not be in a mess for, 40 minutes just to try to get home from an already 40-minute drive to work. So, at this point, I don't know that zoning is something that's going to be hugely effective or able to be done. It might, I don't know, I'm not a planner, but I do know that I believe in planning, and we can see where the population growths are. We can see where, when KGB was exploding, and, that now we have to come up with a road because you had such a dangerous drive that we had people dying there pretty regularly because we didn't plan, and we still had this narrow 2-lane, no-shoulder road. And then we built a prison out there, not expecting visitors were going to want to come and visit their family. And then so we put fourplexes and duplexes and things out there that increased that population and made that road a horrific road to drive as someone who lived 10 miles out KGB Road. It was very scary. And I made accommodations for my children so that they wouldn't have to drive. We did things. So I would like to see better planning. And we have planners that are pretty good at their job. And they have the ability to watch where the growth is and where it's going to be. And I think that we just really need to focus on planning for those areas, taking the property that we need for that plan and growth that is going to affect people who might want to buy property out there. But that's not zoning as much as that's how are we going to make it the best community that we can for continued growth.
Do you think there should be more gun ranges or less gun ranges in the borough, and why?
Okay, so we can address that. We need more. We need lots more. Okay. We have a population out here that likes to shoot, and they need to have a safe place to do that. I know that there's a campaign out there with people because when I was on the planning commission, there was a gun range. It wasn't actually a gun range. And I don't know how deep to go into that, but I will share with you because I know that there has been a notification to not vote for me because I'm trying to take your gun rights away. And it started with a shooting range that somebody wanted to go in. And I think what people don't always realize is conditional use permits are always started by a person. The borough doesn't go out and say, we're going to conditionally use this property. That happens because someone complains about it. And in a situation where there was a gentleman, it was in the Butte, that had set up on his property a sight range for him and his family. And he had friends that said, what a great idea. I wish I had the room to do that. And he said, oh, feel free to come by anytime and sight in your weapons on my property. Thinking like most of us, they would come when we were home. Someone didn't come when he was home, and they decided to go sight in and shoot on the back of his property. And sure enough, a neighbor had bullets flying through his backyard. So he came to us and requested a conditional use permit, or he came to us and said, what are you going to do? How are you going to stop this guy? And the remedy for that was a conditional use permit so that we would know, because this guy had made basically a quasi shooting range in his backyard by allowing people to come there. The CUP was put together, and one of the suggestions was that the borough donate land so that a shooting range, we could build a shooting range and then they would run it. And our concerns were, and I addressed the email that I got from this, and if you want to see my actual concerns as happened that day, I had concerns about the borough owning a shooting range that we didn't run. I said, who's going to build it? Who's going to insure it? Who's going to manage it? And if it's not going to be the borough, then somebody needs to take the land out of our hands because we are going to be legally responsible for what happens on that property. And that became a big issue. And they agreed, well, we'll have volunteers do it. Well, what happens when the volunteers stop volunteering? Are we then going to, because now we have the shooting range, is the borough going to be expected to use taxpayer dollars to then run this shooting range? And are the people who pay property taxes going to be okay with that? Because in addition to, and this is where the research comes in, we found out that there are federal regulations and guidelines for lead. If you have lead that's going into the aquifer, you have to monitor that. And at some point you have to clean it up. It's a long, expensive process. Again, that would fall to the borough as the landowners because nobody's bought this land from us. We're just letting them use it. So the conditional use permit did go in. We did not allow that. But we said, hey, you can build one. If you go buy the property, you can build one and follow these guidelines. That somehow became an issue of, and by the way, the vote was 6-1. I didn't make this vote on my own. The issue was I was trying to take away people's gun rights. I will tell you right now, when I mentioned this to my son, my 28-year-old son, he laughed and said, really? You're going to have a hell of a time taking away my guns, Mom. So I am a gun owner. I go to shooting ranges. My grandson, who is 10, has gone to shooting ranges with me because I believe in gun safety. And that's why I believe we need more shooting ranges. Do I think that we actually could have a shooting class or a gun safety class in our schools? Yes, I would support that completely. We have too many people that have guns, that use guns in this state to not have some kind of a program for shooting safety, although we don't have a lot of people shooting themselves for those reasons. But I still think it's important. And I was highly offended when this very erroneous person was sending out an email to people who, by the way, a man I've never met, never spoken to, who has never spoken to me about this. And he sent out this mass email telling all of his constituents to not appoint me, and that's a decision you're going to have to make. And I know that some of you are up for re-election and votes matter. But I do want it clarified. I am a ardent Second Amendment. Firmly, I believe in it. And I own guns, and I think that the guns are there to protect the people from a government, and I would not, under any circumstances, try to take away someone's guns. So I'm in favor of shooting ranges.
One of the issues that comes up often is people who are worried about a project or a development changing the character of their neighborhood. How would you approach a situation like that?
Well, again, that's listen to the people. I'll tell you when pot became legal and we were setting up pot shops, we had, because, sort of like coffee stands, they started showing up everywhere. They were all contentious meetings because everybody is concerned about that kind of thing coming into a neighborhood. And again, with the conditional use permit, that is how we regulate land use. And if people meet the conditions of a conditional use permit, it's allowed. And that's sort of where that goes. So if they come in, I want to hear people. I want to allow them to have their voices heard. I want to make sure that people are following conditional use permit process as it's laid out, because it's laid out for the safety. And again, conditional use permits are brought forward by people who are concerned or have concerns. And so when they are made, our planning department is very careful to address all of the issues and say, okay, here's how we're going to alleviate this. We're going to make sure that pot grow operations have fans that blow in a certain direction, have lights that, that fold down and don't disturb the neighborhood, that you have to have certain security things if you're going to have a retail shop. All of those things are taken into consideration when the conditional use permits are brought forward. And as long as somebody's meeting them, then they're responsible in what they're doing, because that has been sort of predetermined in the process of getting the permit. So if somebody meets those needs, then I think that they are allowed to do that activity that they choose to do.
What kinds of legislation, if any, would you support to address the issue?
Issue of
people being worried about a project or development changing the character of their neighborhood?
Well, at this point, they have the opportunity to come and speak before the Planning Commission and the Assembly. I don't know that we need legislation determining that, as in state legislation. I don't think we need that. I think that right now the conditional use permit process is working, and again, I think it's working because the way that they are developed. They're developed starting with people's complaints and concerns, and those concerns are addressed. They're modified in the conditional use. They make sure that the person that is going to do that is going to follow those regulations and rules. I know that can be cumbersome and annoying, but it's also allowed us to have people, start projects and start different activities and things without having the quote unquote zoning issues that come to, oh, I can't do that here. It's, yeah, you can. You just have to meet this criteria. You just have to make sure that the neighbors aren't going to be negatively impacted, and that's going to be done through the permitting process. So I don't know that I want state legislation to come in and tell us how we're going to start doing our property rights as we have determined them.
Are you aware that this appointment only lasts until November 2025?
Yes.
Are you aware that if you are appointed, you must file an APOC financial disclosure form?
Yes.
Are you aware that the Borough Assembly meets at least twice a month and much more than that during the spring budget meeting season?
Yes.
Will you regularly be able to participate in the assembly meetings that can last until 11 or midnight?
Yes.
Are you aware that as an assembly member with issues coming before the assembly for a vote, you have to disclose financial and personal interests that could affect you or your family?
Yes.
After hearing all this and answering all these questions, are you still willing to serve if appointed?
Yes.
Do you have anything to add before we finish?
No, thank you for your time. I'm actually glad that the shooting range thing came up. It gave me an opportunity to explain. Like I said, once I had a friend who notified me last night that this was going on, and I was up until almost 4 this morning with that, trying to communicate with this gentleman about what actually happened, and I just really appreciate the consideration, and that I was able to share that one way or the other. I know how you all have your own votes to make, but I appreciate the ability to have my voice heard as well.
Oh, Assemblyperson Hours?
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. Two questions for you. First of all, what got you interested in applying for this position?
So, well, I ran for this position, came in second to Mr. Yunt. And again, it was because of my time on the planning commission, and the school board was quite a while ago, and they're kind of their own entity. But the time I spent on the planning commission, then I have recently, with the expansion of the South Lakes Community Council, I was in that no man's zone for many, many years. And then a few years ago, when they expanded those community councils, that was the one that incorporated into where I lived. Roads is just a big issue. And now we've had the transportation department that has come and done a thing on the Bogard Road and that extension, and to find out that we're 20 years out from probably even starting that process, or at least being well into any kind of development. That's already a broken system. We're already going to have people that are going to be hurt and harmed. And that's an ongoing thing that I have noticed since I moved up here in the 90s, was a lack of planning for transportation and growth and development. And I really want to encourage that.
And then the other question is just, and this is kind of a little bit multifaceted, but, sometimes we look out here and we have about as many people as we do tonight, or less in terms of non-staff folks. And so, there's a lot of people out there who haven't communicated with you, and actually a lot of times people don't even send an email or a call. So, sometimes you don't have the full representation of your district in front of you. And then the other thing that happens up here is you have people in different camps. Like, I'll go to one party and all the people there are all they kind of think the same way, and then I go to another party and they all think a completely opposite way. How do you approach that to make sure that you are making sure that you're touching base with all facets of your district, and truly trying to get the best feel of your folks that live in your district?
So I go back to 6 years on the planning commission, and we probably had 50 people or more in attendance on a half a dozen occasions. We most of the time had 1 or 2 people there, unless an issue came up. And what really happens is, again, people, unless it affects them, people have lives and they're busy. It's not possible to reach 100% of your community and have their input. And I don't think that it's necessarily important, because like our borough is so big, what happens near Denali doesn't affect me, and I really shouldn't probably be participating in that, even though we're the Matsu borough. And, you have to represent everybody. But when things come down that are like, I'm going to have zero effect on this, so I probably should leave that to the people that are going to be affected by it, and just go with what's going to work best for them. That happens in our community councils as well. Our community council goes from Peck Road, which, that's near Wasilla, to Trunk Road. It's a pretty big area. And, and then north as well, to Kings Lakes and that kind of thing. So this road thing, this Bogart thing, because it goes through, and I use Bogart all the time, every single day, that's going to affect me, and it affects everybody in our community. And the community council is working on sending out flyers and doing things. People are still, the meeting that we had last week, we probably had 30 people there. And 10 of them were, the transportation department. They certainly been notified. I've gotten emails, I get texts, and they have a big lighted light. But if people don't want to be involved in that, as much as you'd like them to be, they're not going to be. The frustration then comes when they come to the Borough Assembly and say, I didn't know about it. I never heard about it. Nobody told me about it. And we got that as well. And we can only share the information. The borough would send out notifications, especially for anybody, because they did have that range. If anybody's affected by this conditional use permit, come in, and they would get them flyers. And they would still say we didn't know anything about it. People choose sometimes not to be informed until it's really late. But we can't be focused on that, because as the Assembly, we're looking at what's coming up down the road for everybody. And if you choose to be involved, I will be involved with you. And we will make negotiations, and we will work out what's going to be best. That's why we have, multiple people up there with different viewpoints, and all representing the varying viewpoints, because what's going on in South Connecticut is very different from what's going on in downtown Wasilla. What's important to them. So the willingness to listen and negotiate and talk to people is not only just for the people that come here and talk, it's also for the people that you represent. It's, okay, I want to certainly share what's going to happen and what the response is going to be in my community when these things come up, and try to take into consideration what their concerns are. Some of the concerns are legitimate and large, and some of them are very nuanced, down to, the person that says, I don't want a barking dog in my neighborhood. Well, I can't help that, because we have dogs, okay? But hey, you got this other big thing out here with light pollution coming up from a pot shop, and you can't sleep because you've got these lights. Okay, let's address that. And because that's an issue that as pot shops go up, and there's going to be a bigger problem throughout the borough. And as the Assembly, that's the level that you need to be considering. You talk to each other, you listen to each other. I don't think you give up your points of view, but I think you share them and help other people understand them, so that when the votes come down, people know why you voted, how you voted, and understand that you were doing the best job you could for the people that you represent.
Okay, any further questions? Assemblyperson Fauna.
I can definitely see that you had political or involvement or experience, because your interview or time has have taken now more than the other two candidates. So obviously I could see that.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
You're well informed. So I have two questions. One of the questions I had is, you gave a lot of long answers. One specific one, you said schools should not have any saving or save money. How would you address school capital projects, and there's millions of dollars that is currently needed, if you're saying there shouldn't be saving?
So that would be different, because there would be a capital fund that you would be supporting. What I'm talking about is, when I was on the school board, we were allowed to have 2% to begin the school year the following year of the initial budget remaining. Otherwise, it was believed we were asking for too much money. When you take that as opposed to what Anchorage was doing, they had a $22 million bucket of money. Who's paying for that? And it's sitting there, by the way, because they're still asking the state for more money. So it's just sitting there as the taxpayers are paying more and more and more, and it's not going towards anything. Certainly, if there are projects, then those things need to be taken into consideration as well. And that is a pot of money that then you need to go, okay, we know we've got schools. And in this district, I know that when I was on the school board, we literally had determined that with the growth at that time, and this was in the 2008 to 10 kind of that area, We were told that with the growth that we were having, we could build a new elementary school every year for the next 10 years and still not keep up with the population growth. Now, I think that has changed. And at that time, there were like 40-some, little portables out there as well. But if you have got a specific purpose, then that's not just a pot of money sitting there. That's not just extra cash you're taking from your property owners, okay? That's a purposeful pot of money that's going to be used. And that is something that's perfectly, I think it's needed.
I guess I'll try to simplify the question. We currently have millions of dollars of school improvement capital project that needs to be done. As an assembly, how would you approach that? If you could give shortly, and I'll follow up with something else if not possible. Or what would your position be? Do you bond it or save or only do what's needed? Because currently there's leaky roofs, old generators, that kind of stuff. That is current, not 10 years back, now. What your approach would be to that?
I would bond that because that's an emergency that needs to be taken care of immediately. If you've got leaky roofs, boilers that aren't working, those kinds of things that are affecting the school function, that is something that I would, if the school presented and wanted a bond, I would support that because anything that negatively affects education needs to be addressed.
And we heard probably the longest answer about the gun ranges, which I'm not going to ask, but I will ask a final one. In your governmental political experience with issues that you held one position and later, would you name one, or if there's any that with time you have changed your position on the previous position that you have taken?
I have the racetrack. I was years ago, there was a racetrack issue that came up, and then a new racetrack was put in out in Sutton, and I supported that. And because of some things, I would just say that was a change in me, and part of it was because racetracks after the initial issue, conditional use permit was put on them, and the second racetrack addressed all of those issues that were in the CUP and were very reasonable about that and very amiable to making those adjustments, and I fully supported that racetrack out in Sutton.
Ready? Okay, I think we wrapped it up then. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
For the record, let it show that Assemblyperson Benir arrived in person at 8 p.m. after being online during the whole time. So we're ready for Deputy Mayor.
I move to enter executive session for subjects that tend to be prejudice the reputation and the character of any persons, provided the person may request a public discussion, matters which by law are required to be confidential, and matters involving consideration of government records that by law are not subject to public disclosure. In particular, to discuss the qualifications of candidates for the Assembly District 4 vacancy. Those in executive session will be the mayor, the assembly, the manager, the attorney, and the clerk.
Discussion on the motion. Yes, Assemblyperson Hale.
I don't have any objection, obviously, but could we take a brief at ease before we reconvene in executive session?
Sure. Yeah. So can we go ahead and vote on this motion and then we'll take the at ease if that's okay? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Is there any objection to the motion? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, we will enter the executive session because we're going to take a break at 8:45. How about that?
Colleen, I should have mentioned you can stay. Nick and Mike.
It's Nick and Mike.
We are back, and Deputy Mayor, would you move us out of executive session, please?
I move to exit executive session.
Is there any discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, we will exit executive session at 9:02 PM. Is there any further business to come before the assembly? Deputy Mayor.
I move to appoint Maxwell Summer as for District 4's chair
Okay,
or seat.
discussion about the motion. Is there any objection to the motion? Okay, seeing and hearing none, then the motion passes. Madam Clerk, you want to?
Mr. Sumner, I can get you to come forward. You are going to be, we have you go about right here, because he's going to want to. So I'm going to go through this, and you just repeat after me. Have you raised your right hand? I state your name,
I, Maxwell Sumner,
having been duly appointed
having been duly appointed
to the office of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Assembly,
to the office of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Assembly,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
the Constitution of the State of Alaska,
and the Matanuska-Susitna Borough,
and the Matanuska-Susitna Borough,
and that I will honestly,
and that I will honestly,
faithfully, and impartially
faithfully, and impartially
discharge my duties
discharge my duties
as Assembly member
as Assembly member
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. I'm going to have you sign this after the two appointed. Have you go ahead and sign right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think as soon as he's. So we're now at the part of the meeting where we will do parting comments. Assemblyperson Fauna, we'll start with you this evening. Do you have parting comments?
Thank you everyone that came and interviewed, and I hope that all the candidates will continue to be involved, and if not this position, there's many more, and we always welcome new people here. Thank you.
Assemblyperson Campbell, parting comments?
I have no comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Just thank you for all that applied and congratulations, Mr. Sumner.
Mr. Manager? No. Assemblyperson Hale, parting comments?
Yeah,
sir?
just thank you all for your thoughtful answers to the questions and being willing to serve.
Deputy Mayor, parting comments?
Thank you for all coming out, and thank you for your participation. I wanted to thank Lord and Jesus for all the good things that you do in our lives. Please bless our valley, bless our veterans, our first responders. Please help those that are addicted and in trouble, that need your love, and we all need your love. But just take care of us all, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Parting comments? Assemblyperson McKee? No. Mr. Attorney, parting comments?
Again, thanks to all the applicants and Mr. Colling, if you're listening, you as well. And congratulations to Mr. Sumner, and you and I need to talk very, very soon because you got a lot to learn.
And you thought maybe you were all done with school, right? You're just, you're just getting. So again, thanks for everybody that participated and put their name in the hat. And so I will adjourn the meeting at 9:07?
You will now be disconnected.